It happens in plain sight. A 19-year-old Navy sailor sits at a bar in Singapore. A stranger in a floral shirt sits next to him, making a casual comment about the weather or the beer. 10 minutes later, that sailor has voluntarily revealed the classified propeller specifications of a U.S. submarine, yet the stranger never asked him a single question. This is not a magic trick. It is a psychological exploit known as elicitation, a technique so subtle that the victim never triggers their internal security alarms because they believe they are just having a conversation. This is the reality of the shadow world. We are told that genius is a genetic gift, that focus requires absolute silence, and that mastering a new language takes years of grinding through textbooks. But intelligence agencies like the CIA proved decades ago that these are lies. In the field, silence is a luxury that gets you killed, which is why operatives are trained to memorize confidential files in minutes while surrounded by the chaos of gunfire, sirens, and explosions. They don't learn by reading. They learn by neuropriming their brains to absorb data 10 times faster, often using theta waves to download complex information while they sleep. What you are about to hear is not a collection of study tips. It is the unredacted manual on human cognition. We are taking the exact methods used by Soviet spies and American case officers, techniques designed to hack the learning process and bypass the brain's natural resistance, and handing them to you. Forget the flashcards. Forget the quiet room. We are about to switch your brain into easy mode. Chapter 1. Why Silence Kills Focus. We have been conditioned to believe that the perfect environment for deep work is a sanctuary of absolute silence, a place where the world stops so we can finally hear ourselves think. You probably have this fantasy of the perfect study session involving a clean desk, a closed door, and zero interruptions. But if you look at how elite operatives are trained, you will realize that seeking silence is actually making your mind fragile. CIA agents are never trained in libraries or quiet, cozy rooms. They are trained in the middle of simulated war zones, surrounded by gunfire, screaming sirens, and calculated chaos. This seems counterintuitive until you realize that in the field, silence is a luxury that almost never exists. And if you train your brain to only function when things are perfect, you will freeze the moment reality gets loud. The goal isn't to find a quiet place, but to neuroprime your brain to function amidst the noise, creating a mental callus that makes you immune to distraction. To replicate this, you have to stop hiding from the noise and start inviting it in as a training partner. Instead of locking yourself in a bedroom, take your work to a busy coffee shop, play a soundtrack of street noise, or deliberately introduce unpredictability into your environment. There is a specific technique where you set an alarm to go off every 7 minutes while you are trying to focus, deliberately breaking your flow so your brain has to learn how to snap back into gear instantly. It feels frustrating at first, like trying to meditate in a hurricane, but that friction is the point. By forcing your brain to work through the distraction rather than avoiding it, you are desensitizing your mind to chaos, teaching it to filter out the irrelevant data so that eventually you could be reading a complex report while the world burns down around you and not miss a single detail. Chapter 2. The Sleep Learning Protocol. There is a desperate kind of math we all do late at night, where we look at the clock, calculate how many hours are left before the alarm goes off, and realize there simply isn't enough time to learn everything we need to know. You push yourself until your eyes burn, fueled by caffeine and panic, believing that learning only happens when you are grinding your gears in full consciousness. But that is a fundamental misunderstanding of how the human machine actually processes data. Imagine for a second that you could bypass the resistance of your conscious mind, the part of you that gets bored, distracted, or tired, and upload information directly into the vault while you rest, like a computer running a massive update in the background while the screen is black. This sounds like science fiction, but it was a staple of Soviet intelligence training, a method they called Hypno-learning, designed to teach agents complex languages or mission-critical details in record time by erasing the line between dreaming and manipulation. The secret isn't just playing an audiobook while you snore. It is about accessing a very specific frequency of brain activity known as theta waves, that strange, hazy twilight zone between being awake and falling asleep, where your brain is uniquely pliable and ready to absorb without judgment. To make this work for you, you have to stop treating sleep as just an off switch and start treating it as a passive work session. The technique involves lying down in a dark room and playing a 4 Hz theta wave track in the background, creating a sonic environment that tricks your brain into hovering in that receptive state rather than drifting off completely. As you drift into this gray zone, you review the material you need to master, whether it's Spanish verbs or complex market data, allowing the information to sink into the subconscious without the friction of your analytical mind fighting back. But absorbing the information is only half the battle. The real trick is retrieval, ensuring that what you learned in the dark doesn't stay there. This is where the physical trigger comes in, a technique where you associate that state of hyperfocus with a simple, physical action, like snapping your fingers. You do this repeatedly while you are in the zone, wiring your nervous system to recognize that snap as a command, so that later, when you are standing in the chaos of the real world and your mind starts to drift, a single snap instantly jolts your brain back into that deep, sponge-like state of focus. It is about creating a bridge between your subconscious download and your conscious reality, ensuring that the work you did while the world was sleeping is available to you the moment you wake up. Chapter 3. The Sensory Memory Hack. Have you ever walked past a stranger on the street and caught a whiff of a specific perfume or cologne, and suddenly, without your permission, you are violently pulled back 10 years to a specific moment, a specific person, and a specific feeling? It hits you in the gut before your logical brain even realizes what is happening. And that is because your sense of smell is the only sense that bypasses the logical processing centers and wires directly into the limbic system, the ancient emotional core of the brain. Most of us let these moments happen by accident, letting the world trigger our memories at random. But intelligence operatives understand that this biological loophole is actually a weapon that can be harnessed to lock information into the mind with near-permanent glue. They don't just rely on reading or listening, which are relatively weak signals. They anchor critical data to distinct sensory inputs, essentially hacking the brain's evolutionary mechanism to create a save file that can be reopened on command. You can apply this immediately by introducing a distinct flavor or scent into your study routine that you wouldn't encounter anywhere else. Something like cinnamon gum or a specific essential oil. You chew that gum every single time you are studying a specific subject, and you never chew it at any other time, creating a dedicated neurological pathway where that flavor becomes synonymous with that information. The magic happens later, when you walk into the high-pressure meeting or the exam hall and you pop that same piece of gum into your mouth. The moment the flavor hits your tongue, your brain instinctively reloads the state of mind and the information you encoded with it. It functions like a sensory key for a mental lock, flooding you with the recall you need without you having to frantically search your memory banks. You can layer this even deeper by associating specific subjects with specific colors or tactile sensations like wearing a certain shirt only when you are learning a language, turning your physical environment and your own body into a catalog of triggers. Instead of trying to memorize facts in a vacuum, you are weaving them into the physical fabric of your reality, making it almost impossible to forget because the memory isn't just in your head, it's in your senses. Chapter 4. Your house is a cheat sheet. We have all experienced that strange, slightly embarrassing glitch in the Matrix where you walk into a room and immediately forget why you were there. You stand in the doorway, confused, wondering if your brain just short-circuited, but what actually happened is that your brain closed a file the moment you crossed the threshold. Your mind is hardwired to map information to physical space, treating every new environment as a fresh canvas, which means your memory is inextricably linked to your location. The CIA and intelligence operatives understood this spatial dependency and weaponized it, using a technique often called the memory palace. But they didn't just build these palaces in their imagination. They overlaid them onto the physical world they inhabited every day. Instead of fighting your brain's tendency to reset, you can use your own home as a giant, external hard drive where every object and corner holds a specific piece of data you need to retain. This isn't about staring at a wall and hoping for inspiration. It is about assigning meaning to the mundane architecture of your life. You turn your bathroom mirror into the dashboard for your day's top 3 critical tasks, so that when you brush your teeth, you aren't just looking at your reflection, you are reviewing your mission. Your refrigerator becomes the storage unit for a complex formula or a script you need to memorize. And your front doorway becomes the trigger for the single most important key phrase you need to nail. The beauty of this system is that it requires almost zero conscious effort to maintain because you are already moving through these spaces. Every time you walk past the fridge or step through the door, your brain auto-refreshes the memory associated with that spot, reinforcing the neural pathway simply because you exist in that space. You are essentially turning your living environment into a cheat sheet that you walk through, allowing you to absorb information passively as you go about your routine, rather than forcing it into your head while sitting stagnant at a desk. Chapter 5. The 10-minute supercharge. Most of us were taught to study or work using the brute force method, where you pick a subject, say history or coding, and you hammer away at it for 3 hours until your eyes glaze over. We think that this marathon approach proves our dedication, but in reality, your brain stops recording high-quality data after a surprisingly short amount of time, slipping into a hypnotic numbness where you are reading but not retaining. Intelligence agents cannot afford this kind of cognitive drift, which is why they utilize a technique called active interleaving or neurointerleaving to keep the brain in a state of high alert agility. The method is aggressive and feels chaotic at first. You study one distinct topic for exactly 10 minutes, and then, right when you are getting comfortable, you force yourself to stop and switch to a completely different, unrelated topic for the next 10 minutes. This constant switching prevents your brain from settling into a comfortable rhythm, which sounds exhausting, but that is exactly why it works. By denying your mind the luxury of coasting, you are forcing it to constantly reload context, cross-train between different types of information, and build new connections between isolated facts. It acts like a circuit breaker that shocks your brain into paying attention, creating a pressure cooker environment where the facts don't just sit in isolation, but get woven together into a stronger web of understanding. Instead of one long, slow upload that fades by morning, you get intense bursts of mental downloading where your brain runs faster and harder because it never knows what is coming next. You essentially treat your learning blocks like high-intensity interval training for your mind, stacking different missions back to back, so that by the end of the hour, you haven't just learned one thing slowly, you have absorbed multiple streams of information without breaking a sweat. Chapter 6. The Secret to Not Asking Questions. We are taught from the moment we learn to speak that the only way to get an answer is to ask a question. If you want to know someone's salary, you ask. If you want to know where they were last night, you ask. If you want to know what they are hiding, you interrogate. But in the world of human intelligence, a question is not a key, it is a battering ram, and the moment you use it, you trigger the other person's defenses. When you ask a direct question, the human brain instinctively sets off a series of internal security alarms, instantly calculating why you are asking, what you will do with the information, and how much they should reveal. It creates a binary dynamic of asker and answerer, a subtle power struggle where the other person feels pressed, scrutinized, and guarded, even if the topic is harmless. The CIA and other intelligence agencies realized long ago that to get the real truth, the sensitive, unguarded truth, you have to stop asking questions entirely and master the art of elicitation, a technique originally codified by experts like John Nolan to extract information without the subject ever realizing they are being interviewed. The core of elicitation is shifting from interrogation to observation, using carefully crafted statements instead of queries to compel the other person to volunteer information freely. It works because statements do not demand an answer. They invite a response, bypassing the brain's security alarm because the interaction feels like a casual exchange of thoughts rather than a data extraction. Instead of asking a colleague, "Is this project difficult?" which prompts a generic yes or no, you make a presumptive statement like, "I bet you had some interesting experiences doing that," or "I can imagine that was incredibly challenging." These phrases, starting with "so," "I bet," or "I imagine," signal empathy and understanding, creating a psychological vacuum that the other person feels a natural urge to fill. They hear your statement and feel seen, not questioned, so they open up and start elaborating, layering in details they would have never offered if you had simply asked, "How was it?" This technique leverages the human desire to be understood and to validate one's own experiences. When you say, "So you've been doing this for 3 years," you are handing them a platform to explain their tenure, their struggles, and their status. If you say, "I bet you hate that coffee," you are not demanding an opinion. You are offering a shared sentiment, and even if they love the coffee, they will engage to correct or agree with you, revealing their preferences without feeling surveyed. The more sensitive the information you need, the fewer questions you should be asking, because deep rapport is built on the feeling of a shared wavelength, not a checklist of inquiries. By replacing the question mark with a period, you transform an interrogation into a confession, where the other person tells you everything you want to know because they believe it was their idea to tell you in the first place. Chapter 7. The Art of Being Wrong. There is a flaw in the human ego that is so consistent, so exploitable, that it became the bread and butter of Soviet spies during the Cold War. The overwhelming, burning compulsion to correct the record. We love being right, but we hate it when other people are wrong, especially about things we are experts in. When we hear something incorrect, our desire to fix the error overrides our desire to keep a secret. And intelligence operatives use this by deliberately planting false information to bait a target into revealing the truth. It is a psychological trap where the spy plays the role of the ignorant outsider, making a confident but factually wrong statement, knowing that the target will instinctively rush to correct them, often spilling confidential details in the process just to prove they know what they are talking about. Consider the classic example of a Soviet operative sitting in a bar with a young U.S. Navy sailor. The spy wouldn't ask, "How fast are your submarines?" because that is a classified question that would shut the conversation down immediately. Instead, the spy would casually remark, "I know the German submarines are faster than yours because their propellers are 22 feet wide and yours are only 18 feet. The sailor, perhaps a little drunk and stung by the insult to his ship's capabilities, feels a surge of pride and indignation. He doesn't see a spy, he sees an idiot who needs to be educated. So he turns around and snaps, "No, they aren't. Our propellers are actually much larger, and we can easily outrun them," inadvertently handing over the exact classified specifications the spy was looking for, all because he couldn't stand to let a wrong statement hang in the air. This correction trap works just as effectively in modern, low-stakes environments. If you walked up to a Whole Foods employee and asked, "What is your hourly wage?" they would likely recoil and tell you it's none of your business. But if you walked alongside them and said, "I just read an article that said all Whole Foods employees got bumped up to $26 an hour," that's amazing. The dynamic shifts instantly. They aren't being asked a personal question. They are reacting to a piece of news you shared. They will almost immediately correct you. "What? No way. I only make $17. Effectively giving you the precise data point you wanted without ever realizing they were elicited. You can use this bracketing technique, guessing high or low, or simply expressing disbelief, like saying, "There's no way your company is moving in February, it's too cold," to trigger a response like, "Actually, it is February because..." The moment you make a statement that challenges their reality, you trigger their need to set the world right. And in their rush to correct you, they hand you the keys to the castle. Chapter 8. The Disbelief Trap. If there is one thing the human ego cannot tolerate, it is being doubted. We spend our lives curating a specific image of competence and success. So when someone challenges that narrative, not with aggression, but with simple, incredulous disbelief, we instinctively scramble to provide evidence to the contrary. This is the disbelief trap, a subtle yet devastatingly effective layer of elicitation that pries open the deepest vaults of information because it targets our need to be believed. When you express skepticism about someone's story or situation, you are essentially telling them that their reality doesn't make sense to you. And to resolve that tension, they will pour out the gritty, specific details that prove they are telling the truth. It functions like a psychological wedge. The more you push back with "I don't believe it," the more they push forward with "Let me show you." Imagine you are having dinner with a friend or a target, and you want to know what they have really been up to. You start with a statement like, "You look like you just got back from a vacation," and they correct you saying, "No, actually I've been working nonstop on this new project." A normal person would just say, "Oh, that sucks," and the conversation would die. But an operative digs deeper by feigning admiration mixed with disbelief, saying something like, "Wow, that sounds intense, but I can't imagine there were that many challenges. It sounds like smooth sailing." Now, you have triggered them. By suggesting their struggle was easy or flawless, you have invalidated their hard work, so they will immediately counter with, "No, it wasn't smooth at all. We had issues with the supply chain, The funding almost fell through, and my boss is a nightmare. You haven't asked a single question about their boss or the funding, yet they are handing you the entire operational breakdown just to prove that their struggle was real. You can layer this disbelief to keep the flow of information running until the well is dry. When they tell you about a problem, you can lean back and say, "No way, there is no possible way the CEO would allow that to happen. That doesn't sound right." The target, desperate to prove that they know the inner workings of their company better than you do, will escalate their disclosure. It sounds crazy, but he actually did it because... And then they drop the piece of intel you were really hunting for. You are leveraging their own passion and their desire to correct the record against them. It is a technique that turns a casual chat into a data harvest, all while you sit there appearing to be nothing more than a surprised and engaged listener. You aren't interrogating them, you are simply refusing to believe the surface-level story, forcing them to take you deeper into the truth, whether they intended to or not. Conclusion. We started this journey by acknowledging a lie, the idea that brilliance is a genetic lottery ticket that you either have or you don't. But over the last few chapters, we have dismantled that myth piece by piece, replacing it with the cold, hard reality of Tradecraft. You now understand that the difference between you and the elite operatives who learn languages in weeks or memorize files in minutes isn't talent. It is technique. You have learned that silence is a crutch, and that true focus is forged in the chaos of the real world, neuropriming your brain to function when the sirens are blaring and the pressure is on. You know how to hijack your own sleep, turning your rest into a theta wave download session that absorbs information while you dream. You have the tools to hack your sensory memory using taste and smell to trigger instant recall. And you know how to turn your own home into a physical cheat sheet that refreshes your memory every time you walk through a door. But beyond just managing your own mind, you now possess the keys to unlock others. You understand that asking questions triggers defenses, while making statements triggers confessions. You know how to use the correction trap to get people to correct the record with the very secrets they were trying to hide, and how to use disbelief to make them volunteer the truth just to prove you wrong. These aren't just parlor tricks. They are a fundamental rewriting of how you interact with reality. The world is no longer just a place you live in. It is a training ground, a puzzle, and a library all at once. The next time you walk into a room, don't just exist there. Engage your senses, test your recall, read the environment, and listen to what people are telling you when they think they are just making conversation.